Good afternoon. Thanks. My name is Christine Martone, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of South County. And I'd like to welcome you to the 16th annual Susan B. Wilson Education Merit Award Ceremony. It's a thrill to be here again, to be in this lovely setting and in our state's capital to celebrate this occasion. I'll give you a little background on the League if you don't know. The League was founded in 1920 to support women's suffrage rights and to help women take a larger and active role in public affairs. It also promoted voter education, and over 100 years later, the League continues to provide voter education through candidate forums and informational programming. With the goal of voter education in the forefront of League activities, civics education is the key. The League believes that learning about the fundamentals of good government and the responsibility of each citizen begins in our schools. For students of today to become tomorrow's leaders, civics education is essential. It's the most effective means to better understand and eventually take ownership of our democracy. I'm reminded of an encounter I had registering voters last year at the University of Rhode Island. I stopped one young man and asked him if he was registered to vote, and he said yes he was, but in New York. And I reminded him to be sure to send out for his absentee ballot. He assured me he already had done that, and he said that a civics teacher in high school had urged the students in his class to vote. And he added that he intended to because, as his teacher had told the class, it was their future. And that's the important part. It is teachers like this young man's who we rely on to enlighten students about their responsibilities as citizens of this country, for indeed, knowing how their government works engages them in the issues that impact them and their families. In 2021, Governor McKee signed the Civics Literacy Act, which would require civics as a part of our high school curriculum for all students, beginning with the class of 2023. The Rhode Island Department of Education, RIDE, is finalizing changes in the high school graduation requirements to include civics. And recently, Bill 6464 was introduced in the House. It would establish a new funding category specific to civics education. We applaud this effort as a step toward fully educating students in this subject. To encourage teachers engaged in this endeavor and to honor exceptional teaching, the League of Women Voters South County sponsors the Susan B. Wilson Awards. Susan B. Wilson was a founding member of the League of Women Voters of South Kingstown, Narragansett, now the League of Women Voters South County. She was a passionate proponent for education and civics engagement. And in 1964, when paper ballots were replaced by mechanical voting machines, she made sure voters learned how to use the new technology. In naming these awards in her honor, the League acknowledges the importance of her work for the League and for the values of voter education and civics engagement. On her passing, Ms. Wilson bequeathed a generous donation to the League of Women Voters Rhode Island Education Fund, and it is with these funds that we provide the awards. Every year, the award committee receives applications that are inspiring and innovative, and this year is no different. Please join us to honor our teachers. Now I'd like to introduce Kristen Chambers, who will be our moderator.
Thank you, Chris. I don't know how she did that without glasses. Welcome to our esteemed winners and evaluators, family and friends, the Secretary of State, fellow League members, and guests to the 16th Annual Susan B. Wilson Civic Education Awards. Thank you to my fellow Wilson Committee members, Chris Martone, Nancy McLean, and Mary Lynn McKenna for making this ceremony possible. The committee recognizes and thanks the indefatigable Nina Rosamando, our former chair. Her strong belief that the League's mission of promoting and funding civic education of our young people is crucial to a strong democracy, helped shape the Wilson Awards into what they are today. 1 year ago, when we met in this room for this event, the atmosphere was markedly different. And I don't just mean the smoggy type of atmosphere, which is wreaking havoc with my throat. But that day, a vote was scheduled that same afternoon on several gun violence prevention bills. Hundreds of citizens, pro and con, filled the halls, and Wilson attendees had to weave their way here through the boisterous crowd. Imagine for those of you who are first-timers today, what it would have been like last year. The noise of the seemingly never-ending buzzer that indicates the session is about to start, coupled with the angry voices of those upset by the passage of gun safety bills into law, made it difficult for our speakers to make themselves heard. And we thank our videographer, Dylan Ruggieri, who was here last year, who took the time to edit out all the background noise so you can watch the video and hear what people are saying. I've been dreading a repeat of that scene this year, but fortunately no contentious bills are scheduled today. On the other hand, it is unfortunate that with time swiftly running out for the 2023 session, the gun safety bills supported by the League of Women Voters and its allies have yet to be scheduled for a vote, but there's still hope. And I'd like to introduce now, tell you something about our keynote speaker, Secretary of State Greg Amore. Empowering voters, defending democracy. This is the motto of the League of Women Voters, and the #1 reason that I became a member 3 years ago. Empowering voters, defending democracy is an apt and succinct job description for a Secretary of State. Though unfortunately in recent times we've been made aware of many Secretaries of State around the country who betrayed these precepts, Secretary Amore has proved himself a superhero in upholding them. That does not surprise us because Secretary Amore, if you didn't know, is a teacher. Not only that, he's a civics teacher. This could be one of our winners in some years. Secretary of State Greg Amore is a townie and a Rhode Islander through and through. If you don't know what a townie is, you're going to find out because I think we've got 3 of them who are going to talk today. He is a proud, lifelong resident of East Providence, where he has been a teacher, coach, and community volunteer for over 30 years. He married his high school sweetheart, Lee Smith, and they have 2 adult daughters, Tess and Megan. He graduated from East Providence High School in 1984 before continuing his education at Providence College, where he earned a bachelor's degree in history in 1988. In 2010, he earned a master's degree in public policy from New England College. Greg taught advanced placement U.S. history and U.S. civics and government courses at EPHS for 27 years. And in 2008 was recognized as the Rhode Island History Teacher of the Year by the Daughters of the American Revolution. Again, that's going to come up with another person. He served as the East Providence High School Close-Up and United States Senate Youth Program Advisor for 15 years. He was instrumental in the process to build and finance the new East Providence High School, which opened its doors in September of 2021. In 2017, Greg took over as the East Providence School District Athletic Administrator and is credited with significantly expanding East Providence's Unified Sports Special Olympics programs during his tenure. He has enjoyed a rewarding high school and college coaching career in both hockey and baseball, including serving as head baseball coach at LaSalle Academy, East Providence High School, and the U.S. Naval Academy Prep School in Newport. He led the Townies to a hockey championship in 2005 and was an assistant baseball coach at PC, where he also played as a member of the Friars team in the 1980s. Committed to public service, Greg ran for state representative in 2012 and served the residents of East Providence with distinction for 10 years. He advanced the House of Representatives' education agenda, which included key education reform legislation related to curriculum and site-based management. He has championed efforts to significantly increase English language learner categorical funding, school construction initiatives, the retention and recruitment of teachers of color, and making college more affordable for Rhode Islanders. In 2021, he was honored by the Rhode Island School Superintendents Association with the Paul Crowley Award for his commitment to public education. Now listen to this. This is why we wanted him here. In 2021, Representative Amore co-sponsored the law which requires students to demonstrate proficiency in civics education before high school graduation, earning him recognition from the League of Women Voters, who awarded him their Civic Engagement Award. In 2021 and 2022, Greg called for the passage of and co-sponsored the Let RI Vote Act, a bill that became law in 2022, which significantly expanded access to the ballot. Additionally, Greg has been twice selected as the Mothers Against Drunk Driving RI Legislator of the Year for his legislative efforts around curbing drunk driving. In 2022, he was the recipient of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence Legislative Champion Award for his sponsorship of the Address Confidentiality Law. And I did cut a couple of things out of the script, or we'd be here forever, but you can see why he's a superhero. Greg was elected RI Secretary of State in November 2022 and was sworn into office in January 2023. I might also mention, I've been really impressed by how he has been going into all the high schools and really has been dealing with students about civics education. Please welcome our keynote speaker, the Honorable Greg Amore.
Thank you, Christine. It was very nice. I'm exhausted listening to that. Welcome to the stateroom, the beautiful stateroom. I'm always cognizant of the fact that I'm speaking in front of the Gilbert Stewart Washington portrait, and I think it's cool. So as a history teacher, that's important to me. It's an honor to be here today with you all, and to honor the legacy of Susan B. Wilson, of course. I do want to recognize my colleagues in government who have joined us here today, Representative Boylan, Representative Casmero, and Representative Fogarty. I think I've covered it. I also want to acknowledge my long-time colleague at East Providence High School. It pains me to say this, but the best teacher at East Providence High School for years and years and years, Richard Martin, who is one of the evaluators. And now I feel under a great deal of pressure. He is such a magnificent public speaker that I have to speak before him, so it's difficult. So as was mentioned, I'm a teacher. I'm a history and civics teacher, so civic education is incredibly important to me. And as was mentioned, yesterday we visited our 21st school where we delivered our lesson, and that's what we do. We go into civics classrooms and we deliver a voting rights lesson. We talk about what voting rights looked like at the beginning of the Republic and what it looks like now. We talk about suppression efforts, we talk about access, and we allow the students to answer questions and engage us in this process. I bring my bar of soap and I ask them how many bubbles in this bar of soap, and they can't answer that. Just as voters in Alabama could not answer that when they were denied the right to vote. We bring out our jar of jelly beans and we say, how many jelly beans are in this jar? And they say, how can we know that? And I say, yes, how could you know that? That's an effort used to deny blacks the right to vote throughout the South, but in particular in Alabama. Richard Martin and I visited many of these sites on the Teaching American History Civil Rights Tour and learned from folks who had to take those tests and clearly could not pass those tests. So it's important for us to be in those classrooms. Before I begin my formal remarks, I want to tell you that the students that we have engaged, the teachers who we have worked with, and we're going to honor some really fabulous teachers here today, and it always makes me happy to say that. They have been fantastic in every way. in every way, and we have been everywhere. We've been to public schools, private schools, charter schools, we've been to urban schools, suburban schools, rural schools, we have been everywhere. And I am heartened by the response and by the curiosity of our students. It is very clear that when we talk about the Klan and why the Klan first formed as a voter suppression group, the reason they wore masks, because they were civic leaders who had been denied the right to vote through Reconstruction, and they were hiding their identity because they knew what they were doing was wrong, and that was the first form of suppression that the Klan was designed to suppress the black vote. And so students' eyes light up, and they want to ask more questions about that. And so I'm really encouraged, and we're going to do this. We're going to do this as long as I'm in this office. We're going to go to schools. We started in March, so we did 21 schools from March 1st on. And we'll start up again in October, and we'll offer 2 lessons starting in October, one on rights and responsibilities, and we'll do the voting rights one as well. So let me get to what are the formal remarks. Anyone who knows me well, and unfortunately the staff at the Department of State now is starting to learn this, knows that I admire Abraham Lincoln. We have 2 Abraham Lincoln busts in our office. I have books there. I quote Lincoln all the time. I know for them it gets sickening. But January 6th reminded us, and reminded me in particular, of an Abraham Lincoln speech that doesn't get much attention. Because he was 28 years old when he gave it. He was a Whig. The Republican Party did not exist when he gave this speech. And he was a young member of the Illinois legislature. And he was asked to speak to the Springfield Lyceum in what is known as the Lyceum Address. Now, the Lyceum Address was not a famous speech until Abraham Lincoln became Abraham Lincoln. And people started to look back at it and analyze the speech. That was not even the name of the speech. The name of the speech was The Preservation of Our Political Institutions. And unlike the Gettysburg Address, which was 2 minutes, the Lyceum Address went on for quite some time. And I'm going to give you the short version of what he was trying to get at. Lincoln was concerned as the founding generation was dying off, that Americans had forgotten the values that were instilled in the founding documents. In fact, he was more concerned with the fact that Americans were not paying attention to the founding documents at all, that they were ignoring what had become the basis of American democracy. They were ignoring those things at great peril to the Union. He was very concerned, extremely concerned, that because there was what he termed in the speech as mobocracy, and because there were lynchings that were going on, there were riots that were going on, there were newspaper editors and publishers who were being threatened, killed. He was concerned that the lawlessness in the country was a direct result of abandoning the founding values in the founding documents. And he went further and said, this may lead to an autocrat taking power in our nation. This may lead to someone who will take advantage of the environment, of the mobocracy, who will whip that mobocracy up and gain political power. This was his warning to America in 1838. So this is well prior to the Civil War, although much of what he was talking about was a precursor to the Civil War. And he issued not only a warning, but he issued an antidote. He always, in fact, anytime Lincoln spoke, he spoke first about what the problem was, and then he offered a significant solution. And so the quote that I'm about to read for you is the quote that is always connected to the Lyceum speech, even though many, many people consider it a Civil War era speech because it fits the Civil War. But what Lincoln was talking about was that fear that from within we would have a tyrant become a leader in the United States of America. And if we did not address this in the way that I'll talk about in a moment, then we were going to be in trouble. So bear with me while I quote what I think is the most important part of this speech. Lincoln says, "At what point shall we expect the approach of danger? By what means shall we fortify against it? Shall we expect some transatlantic military giant to step the ocean and crush us at a blow? Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined, with all the treasure of the earth, our own excepted, in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio, or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years? At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. And I could not help but think of the Lyceum speech as I watched the images at the Capitol on January 6th. It resonated with me. It's one of the reasons I ran for Secretary of State. That was such a powerful moment, and I went right back to Lincoln. Now, Lincoln offered his solution, and we are celebrating that solution here today. Lincoln's solution was teach civics, teach civics, teach civics. In fact, he said, teach it with a religious vigor. Make sure that you talk about it day and night from the pulpit at the dinner table. Make sure that all of our citizens understand our founding documents, understand the principles within those founding documents. And then when you're done talking about it, talk about it again. It is the greatest speech in favor of civic education in the history of the free world. And he knew that in order to convince, we're law-abiding citizens for the most part, that the behavior they were witnessing was outside of the American norm. And it was outside of the American norm because of the founding principles, because of what was written in the Declaration of Independence, because of what was written in the Constitution, because of what was written in the Bill of Rights. And this is powerful, and it's as powerful today in the environment that we are in as it was when young Abraham Lincoln gave this speech. By the way, to very little attention. It was picked up by local newspapers, but it was not until Lincoln's death and an analysis of his speeches that people started to realize what an important speech the Lyceum speech was. So today, and again, I am honored to be here with the League of Women Voters of South County, because you are taking Abraham Lincoln's words and you are acknowledging those among us who work every single day to make sure that our young people understand what it means to be an American, what it means to utter the words, all men are created equal, what it means when we don't live up to those values that are written into those documents, and how we strive every single day to make sure that we can live up to those values. And so it is incredibly important to focus on civic education, especially today. Now, we see around the country attempts to diminish educators' role in creating an environment where students will critically think. And, you know, I often think of the best teachers I ever had. And the thing that made, the many things that made them great were all centered around the fact that they could make me think, that they could make me critically think, that they could make me question something that I had never questioned before, and that I could then further inquire about that. I could have a conversation with a friend, a family member, and start to learn a little more about what had been sparked in me. And that is who we are recognizing today. Those really talented people who most folks do not know, go every single day at this with passion, with a commitment to their students, with the understanding that they are the guardians of our democracy. And that is not an overstatement. That is not an overstatement. So at the conclusion of our civics lessons at the various schools, and Representative Cotter has just walked in, thank you for joining us. At the conclusion of these lessons, the last thing I talk about is civil civics and civility within our discussions. This generation of students has grown up witnessing vitriol. They have grown up witnessing politicians saying the worst things to each other and about each other. They have grown up in an ad hominem attack environment, rather than an environment where the marketplace of ideas wins out, where you defend your position with facts and you try to convince the majority that you are in the right. And then you try to convince that majority to go out there and vote and support your ideas. And so we have been talking to the students in a larger sense about how they have to interact with one another. That they may disagree on an issue like gun control, but they should disagree in a civil manner lay out their case, and listen before they are responding to what their opponent in the argument, and by the way, we have to define what an argument means today. An argument is not a bad thing. An argument's a good thing. It's not a fight, it's an argument. And their opponent in the argument needs to be respected. You know, I was at an event last night where Dr. Ibra Kendi was speaking, and he said that we need to welcome in all folks, because if we kicked all the sinners out of church, there'd be nobody in the congregation. And so I am trying to convince our students who know they are in the right, and I want them to fight for what they know is in the right, that they have to open the door to those that disagree with them, and convince, and convince, and cajole, and convince, and do it with such respect, and such information, and a pocket full of facts, and rebuttals that are not mean-spirited, but that are based on research and critical thinking and a respect for the process. Because if we don't do that, then we will die by suicide. It is inevitable. We are the only ones that can orchestrate our destruction, as Lincoln warned. And those that stand in the way of that destruction are God's people, the social studies teachers. And Richard Martin would always say, you know, who do they come for first? They come for the social studies teachers, because we are speaking the truth. But not only are we speaking the truth, we're allowing our students to speak their truth. There is no place in the school day to exercise your First Amendment right like a social studies class. There's no place where you can debate the issues of the day. There's no place where you can go home and say to your mom or dad, or whoever might be sitting at the table, I think you're wrong about that, and this is why. And that's not indoctrination. That's critical thinking. That's critical thinking. And we should be celebrating critical thinking. So, I am honored to be here with such great educators. I am honored to be here with an organization that shares the values of Abraham Lincoln and everyone who believes in our democracy. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you so much, Secretary Moran. And I want to say I am thrilled you mentioned the name Rep. Cotter walked into the room. That's my rep, who I'm not going to name any other names except to say she replaced someone who just happened to be in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And Megan. Our first presenter, evaluator, is Richard Martin. Last May, I think, of last year, League President Christine Martone and I met Richard Martin on the baseball field of North Kingstown High School. Chris and I were registering voters at a DEI event sponsored by Towards an Anti-Racist North Kingstown Tank. Richard was one of the guest speakers, and we were bowled over by his powerful, personal, and eloquent presentation. Learning of his background as a civics and social studies teacher, Chris and I immediately knew we would invite him to be an evaluator for the 2023 Wilson Awards. We're really happy that he agreed to do so. Richard J.G. Martin retired after 42 years as a classroom teacher, 37 of them in the East Providence School District. He was a social studies teacher who taught African American history, Africana Studies, EEP, and AP Government and Civics, the last 23 years of which were at East Providence High School. Richard believes that written and analytical skills are not only a fundamental part of academic excellence, but are also the building blocks of critical thinking in high school and beyond. He has been recognized by the 2004 Kappa Delta Pi International Honor Society in Education, which recognizes educators for their dedication to students in the field of education. In 2007, the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, remember, awarded Richard the Rhode Island Chapter Outstanding Teacher of American History. In 2017, he was named East Providence District Teacher of the Year. Richard holds a BA in Education and History from the University of Rhode Island and a master's degree in African and African American Studies from Rhode Island College. Richard will be presenting our honorable mention winner, Serena Mason. So Richard.
Thank you. This is, first of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, South County, for asking me to participate in such a worthwhile endeavor. Anytime I get a chance to honor teachers, I just talk about teaching. It's tremendous, and I light up because I've spent my entire life teaching. And so to be among the award winners is a tremendous honor. Before I start with my remarks, I'd just like to say what you heard before me from Secretary Amore is what you heard every single day in this classroom. And teachers know, right? There's a thing called it. And you know who has it when you hear it and when you see it. And so when you hear it and see it, you want to be around those people. And so I would, on my free periods, on my planning periods, stand outside his classroom and listen. And he would stand outside my classroom and listen. And that's, to me, one of the highest honors that you can bestow a teacher, is that I was walking by your room and I should have been doing my duty, but I stopped. Instead, I stayed and listened outside your classroom. So what you heard from Secretary Moore was just a taste of what his students listened to for years and years and years, and all of the young minds that he sent out into the world. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. Thomas Jefferson. Good afternoon, my name is Richard Martin. It is my great pleasure to speak on behalf of Serena Mason. From North Kingstown High School, the Honorable Mention Susan Wilson Civic Education Merit Award winner. Ms. Mason has been a history and social studies teacher for 26 years in North Kingstown High School. She teaches U.S. History 2, Honors History, History through Film 1 and 2, and Democracy class. She's taken over 1,000 students around the globe to 31 countries and counting on her Mason Tours trips since 1999. She was the 2008-2009 North Kingstown District Teacher of the Year and the 2019 Daughters of the American Revolution State Teacher of the Year Award winner. Welcome to the team. However, her greatest pride comes from being the daughter of two amazing parents and teachers, Nancy Mason and Vietnam veteran Lieutenant Colonel Robert Mason. Please come on. Let me stray off script for just a moment. Teaching is a calling. You are drawn to it because either you had teachers throughout your education or you had teachers sitting at your dining room table. Tremendous. As a retired educator with 42 years of classroom experience, I know how hard all of this year's honorees work inside and outside their classrooms. Each honoree brings energy and passion to their civic instruction. I was very impressed with Ms. Mason's years of experience and her contribution to the development of the North Kingstown High School civics curriculum. The study of civics is one of the most important subjects taught in our schools. The importance of the duties and responsibilities of citizenship cannot be overstated, and each student must be taught the fundamentals of the workings of our democracy and its institutions, and the role of each and how citizens must be active participants. The federal system, which includes local, state, and the federal government, are inextricably linked, and each has an important role in the lives of everyday citizens. As students engage in civics education inside and outside the classroom, They are reminded of their duties and responsibilities, which are crucial to the health of our democracy. Sometimes civic education is overshadowed by STEM and other subjects, which, while important, do not make citizens. Only civics and civic engagement make citizens. I've been screaming that from the mountaintops. All that other stuff is wonderful. It's wonderful. We make citizens. You make citizens. Only civics and civic engagement make citizens. Serena Mason and North Kingstown have created a curriculum for civic education which poses many essential questions for students. The curriculum has many opportunities for students to engage with issues at all levels of government, including investigating international issues. Students are encouraged to participate in their democracy with their senior project-style research and presentation projects. In an article entitled Perspectives on the Constitution, a Republic If You Can Keep It, Dr. Richard Beeman, a professor of history and dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Pennsylvania, argued, quote, "If there is a lesson in all of this, it is that our Constitution is neither a self-actuating nor self-correcting document. It requires the constant attention and devotion of all citizens." There is a story often told that upon exiting the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin was approached by a group of citizens asking what sort of government the delegates had created. His answer was, "A republic if you can keep it." The brevity of that response should not cause us to undervalue its essential meaning. Democratic republics are not merely founded upon the consent of the people. They are also absolutely dependent upon the active and informed involvement of the people for their continued good health. In conclusion, I would like to congratulate Serena Mason, this year's Honorable Mention Susan Wilson Civic Education Merit Award winner. Frank Newman, an American education reformer, remarked, "The most important thing an institution does is not prepare a student for a career, but for life as a citizen." With engaging teachers like Serena Mason, and our jury prize honoree Christopher Stanley, and our grand prize winner Heidi Lamb, Rhode Island students are in great hands as they prepare to take their place as the next generation of engaged participants in American democracy. It is my honor and pleasure to present two things. One, there's a citation from Secretary Amore that we have for you. And then we have the League of Women Voters of Rhode Island. In recognition of the exemplary work in civic education in the state of Rhode Island, Serena Mason, North Kingstown High School, North Kingstown, Rhode Island, is bestowed the Susan B. Wilson Civic Education Merit Award Honorable Mention Prize on this day, Wednesday, the 7th of June, 2023, by the League of Women Voters, South County. Congratulations.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming here today. I want to first start by relaying my great appreciation to the League of South County Women Voters for this very great honor. I want to thank you all for the work that you do and how you hold civic education educators in such high esteem. I want to thank the jury panel, in particular, Mr. Martin, for that amazing speech and introduction. I couldn't ask for anything better. I want to thank Secretary of State Greg Moore for his tireless support of teachers and holding up the importance of learning history and how our nation functions with regards to government and voting. And I want to let you know as a sidebar, he doesn't just come in here and say these things and leave. Not 2 weeks ago, he was at North Kingstown High School in one of our civics classes, engaging our students, asking them tough questions, but more importantly, listening to them, making them feel empowered, that they were heard, and they were people of value and worth. If we could clone this man, we'd be in very good shape. We could not ask for a better Secretary of State. In addition, I would also like to let you know that I'm forever indebted to my parents, who are both teachers, Robert Mason and Nancy Mason, who instilled in me a passion for travel, education, and history from the age of 2. when I used to look at a globe with my mother, locating where my father was serving in the Vietnam conflict. I feel that by age 3, I knew every country on the globe. As a teacher, we strive to cultivate in our students a desire to become lifelong learners, travelers, readers, and engaged citizenry in our cities, towns, states, and nation. Voting is our voice and the strength of our political empowerment. It is an essential right that should be coveted, embraced, and held up for future generations to understand the importance of participatory involvement in the functioning government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Teaching U.S. history, democracy, and U.S. Constitution are essential building blocks for all Rhode Island students. It is true, we make the students, we make the citizens, they are the future leaders. At North Kingstown High School, where I teach, students are required to take 3.5 years of history, to include World History freshman year, U.S. History 1 sophomore year, and U.S. History 2 junior year. In addition, they have another requirement. They must take a half year of democracy. Some might call it civics, but we call it democracy. We were the first high school in the state to fight for this democracy requirement and implemented an entire program under the leadership of our department chair, Mr. Lawrence Ferrier. In our democracy classes, students create a civic self-directed engagement project and then present it to the town, school, and elected officials during our Big Democracy Night. We do not tell the students what to do, we let them pick the project, and then we step off to the side of the stage and let them go. We just had our previous Democracy Night, we do one a semester, so that was done in January, and literally our next Democracy Night is tomorrow night. We're all invited. It is a joy to see the students so engaged and excited about their projects that they have researched and brought to fruition, realizing that they can have a voice in our government and can make a difference and lead by example and with confidence, even if they're not 18. Every day, my students inspire me so that I've never missed a day of school in my entire 26-year teaching career. I've not taken a personal day, and I always tell my students, it's true. I always tell my students there's only 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and Mason. Hopefully not in order. With my Mason tours, as Mr. Martin noted, I've taken over 1,000 students around the globe to 32 countries since 1999, and we've seen firsthand how other nations govern and function. We've always appreciated going abroad, but more so returning to our great nation and all its unlimited possibilities for our students' future paths, whether they would go to college, possibly the military, or directly into the workforce upon graduation, all to be productive and engaged citizens in the towns they live in. Our goal is to educate our students not just to be students of the towns they live in, but of the nation and good global citizens, because we're so interconnected. Okay, faces, races, it's very important that we do this. Our North Kingstown High School department has exactly 15 members. I am the only woman in the department, therefore the prettiest. I think about this when I teach my students about women's rights and the passage of the women's suffrage movement, Amendment 19 and 1920. Suffragettes like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, and Alice Paul fought for women to gain the same rights at the ballot box as their male counterparts. They saw voting as the key to any meaningful political door they wished to walk through in life. Later in the 1960s, the youth of America realized they could mobilize into a powerful voice for their generation and advocate for legislation they wanted with regards to the modern civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, and the anti-war movement, and many more. Realizing the power of voting, they endeavored to lower the voting age from 21 to 18, with Amendment 26, which was successfully passed in the year 1971. It was passed in just over 3 months, and making it the quickest of all 27 amendments to be passed into law. That tells you the importance. And I want to also have a quote in my speech, but not from an American. Plot twist. My quote is from Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill once said, "We make a living by what we do, but we make a life by what we give." By holding up the importance of voting and civic education, we are ensuring future generations have the tools they need to shape the nation to a better place. Teaching our students has been a challenge over the last 2 years, as any teacher will tell you, with COVID and the accompanying trauma. But we teachers who are on the front lines persevere on. Our nation has seen much divisive political and civil discourse in the last few years as well. Some people are more concerned about what comes before the hyphen, But at the end of the day, what comes after the hyphen is the most important for us all, and that is the word American. We are all the same when we go into the poll booth to vote. Every vote and every voice matters. Thank you very much.
Our next evaluator is April Dinwiddie. If you live in the westerly South County area, you have likely heard of April Dinwiddie. She has a dynamic social media presence and is one busy lady. April is a founding member of the Westerly Anti-Racism Coalition, ARC, which was formed in 2020, shortly after the murder of George Floyd. ARC has peacefully demonstrated on the steps of the Westerly Post Office every Sunday from 11 to 1 since then. April Dinwiddie is an adoption activist, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging professional. As a fiercely dedicated leader, April's work helps individuals, systems, and corporations as they navigate the foundational elements of identity, relationships, and differences of race, culture, and class. April works on several federal grants to support adoptive, foster, and guardianship families, as well as leading Transracial Journeys, which is a camp for families experiencing transracial adoption. April's podcast, Born in June, Raised in April, What Adoption Can Teach the World, helps facilitate an open dialogue about identity, family, and diversity. April serves as the chair of the town of Westerly's newly formed Multicultural Committee. April will be introducing our jury prize winner, Christopher Stanley. April?
Hello, thanks for having me, it's a joy. And as I sit here and as I was privileged to read through all the submissions, how I wished these were my teachers. I didn't have the benefit of such engagement or care, and I felt like through my experience in reading what was happening, that I felt a little more seen even in my grown-up years outside of school. So if you're creating that space for the places, for the people, the young people that you are engaging, it is truly transformational. So with that, I am honored to present the Susan B. Wilson Civic Education Jury Prize to Christopher Stanley. The League has really made a beautiful space to honor folks, and it is just through that extension that I am able to do this, and it's truly an honor for me. So, complicated times require clever and engaging solutions that help students truly see the value of their involvement in civics, and as a means to make a difference in their surroundings. Christopher Stanley's work at Pontiac High School serves as an example of what is possible when an educator prioritizes experiential learning in the settings outside of a traditional classroom. By having the AP US History program move outside of the class and into the larger community for first-hand learning, lessons of history and civics became transformational and deeply personal. Over the last 23 years, Christopher has implemented many hands-on research projects, as well as assigning extensive writing and understanding and research analysis of these projects, through these projects. Each individual project is grounded in his belief that students learn best when they are truly engaged. His projects focus on students' personal and academic achievements while ensuring they are engaged in their learning our collective history. Over the years, some of these projects have included the Moving Wall Project, an oral history of the Vietnam War, Pontiac Remembers, a tribute to the 9/11 who have fallen, and a history of Black History 101. These projects have made sustained and creative and substantive contributions to the education within the Foster-Gloucester School District, Regional School District. The projects incorporated community-wide ceremonies that led to the construction of 2 permanent monuments on campus that paid tribute to the sacrifice of ordinary Americans as they labored to secure our nation's freedom and prosperity. The most recent project, a multidisciplinary project, which I learned so much from in just reading through his submission, is called Where the Rivers Meet. And this project was an opportunity for the teachers to teach a diverse group of students about the history of the Nipmuc, thank you, or freshwater people, who not only occupied the interior portion of what is now Massachusetts and parts of Rhode Island and Connecticut, but lived on the very land that Pontiac High School now rests. The primary focus was engaging students in this historical inquiry by having them analyze primary documents and leading them to understand the central role that history and civics engagement plays in their lives. Additionally, students collaborated with various local community resources, such as the Gloucester Historic Preservation Society, the Gloucester Public Library, the State of Rhode Island's Archives, and the Wabascut Trail Council. The project directly impacted the continuing dialogue around the number of challenging projects that the history presents, including the discussion about changing the school mascot, the chieftain's head, to a symbol that better represented the Nipmuc people and their traditions. By initiating a year-long program, students investigated how Foster-Gloucester School District came to acquire the land that their school sits, learned about the lives of the indigenous people who lived on the land, and promoted the individual's role in fostering a spirit of inclusion, generated a dialogue about the pre-Columbian local history, and provided the tools needed to truly understand the past. Throughout these immersive projects, students also engaged in other various academic work, such as analyzing primary resource documents and materials, compiling biographies and sources related to the Nipmuc, and producing a 2-day event that advanced the public history of the Nipmuc. As a result of this work, students demonstrated a better understanding of civics and how individuals and groups exercise or are denied their rights and responsibilities by developing and participating, reflecting on a decision-making experience of the larger community and responding to a community's needs. Once again, it's truly my honor to present Christopher Stanley this prize for his truly transformational work that will impact not only his community, but most importantly the students that he has educated and inspired. But again, you have changed me by your work as a result of what you did. So I appreciate you so much. I'm going to read your award, and this citation meant something as I opened it before I heard our Secretary of State speak, but it actually means even more now that I've actually experienced him a little bit more. So it was really important before, and now after it feels like even more special. So first I'll read your award. In recognition of exemplary work in civic education in the state of Rhode Island, Christopher Stanley, Pontiac High School, North Situate, Rhode Island, is bestowed the Susan B. Wilson Civic Education Merit Award Jury Prize on this day, Wednesday, the 7th of June, 2023, by the League of Women Voters, South County, for fulfilling one or more of the following criteria: enriching students' life, understanding the civics, enriching students' understanding of civics rights and responsibilities, encouraging student civic participation, and brings content and relevance to pivotal civic efforts and events affecting the United States of America on a national, regional, statewide, or local level. And last, promotes an understanding and appreciation of individuals who play a role in civic events. And from our Secretary of State. Be it hereby known to all that I, Craig Amore, Secretary of State of Rhode Island, do hereby extend my congratulations on winning the jury prize for the Susan B. Wilson Civic Education Merit Award. Thank you for the commitment to the importance of civic education in all public schools. You have encouraged your students to participate in community events and to understand the importance of democracy.
Good evening. Secretary and I have something very in common. We're passionate. And that makes it difficult in students' lives. His path, his trajectory, is very similar to mine. For 20 years, I served on the Warren Town Council as the president. I ran for the office of Secretary of State in 2000. Mostly because a student asked me a question. And that's where everything I do in the classroom comes from. It's some student's question. Those people that know me know I'm a little bit of a nut. There's a motto on the front of the school that says, start here, go big. And I try to go big. I try to make an impression upon those students. After 17 years or so of teaching high school, that guy up there, I can tell you everything about him. I get a little bored year after year after year. So I started reinventing my practice and really bringing civics into the classroom. We're a nation of people. The state government isn't made up of bricks and mortar and paper. It's the people who serve. So my job as a history teacher, as somebody who believes in the Constitution, who believes in civics, is to put my thumbprint on their heart, to move them emotionally. It's not always easy. I'm learning with a teenage daughter how easy it's not. But it's important. So when I started my career, I reached back to my boyhood. Where did this passion, this zeal for politics and being a member of society and being a good citizen come from? Two places. My parents, who always for some reason insisted on the educational family vacation, and we went all across the country. As difficult it was maybe for them sometimes to put together a family vacation. They dragged us along, we camped, but we saw much of America and much of the people. The other one was the Boy Scouts. I became an Eagle Scout just before I was 18. When they come into that room and you raise that hand, they give you a charge, and they tell you it is your duty to serve. And from that moment on, community service was a passion and something that I tried to bring to the classroom every single day, and every day since then. Somehow, some way, my life has been about serving other people. Whether it was bringing the wall, trying to pay tribute to those men in my town who raised me, to say thank you, guys like Al Gallinelli, and the late Sinbad, my father, because they deserve that appreciation for having served during those times. That started as a student question. Can we go to the wall? I don't know, that's kind of complicated. How about this? I'll bring it to you. And I did. I had already had some experience in bringing the wall to Warren, but I figured, I can do this. And it's a challenge. And the worst thing you can do is challenge it. Because if you do, I'll take it up and I'll run with it. And I'll turn it into something that is, I hope, spectacular. I don't always know exactly where I'm going with something. It gets rattled in the brain, things start to go, next thing you know, you got flyovers, helicopters. But this started as a challenge. There was a debate, and it kind of went south, and things weren't looking good between the Native Americans of Rhode Island and Pontiac High School. So I started this before COVID, and I started bringing people together to formulate a better understanding and work with the kids to come up with really 6 distinct panels that tell the history of the Nipmuc people and the land that the school rests on. That That wasn't necessarily the challenge. The challenge was to get us to recognize in some way that they were still here. And I built upon that. If you can picture in your mind, in a field house, 900 kids stepping out of themselves onto the floor and doing the brass dance. Perfect behavior, respectful, and participating. That's what we're there to do. Put that thumbprint on their heart. Get them to feel something. So everything that I've done is to try to get an impression upon them that civics is important. They often come, oh, history is boring. Oh, Mr. Stanley, do we have to do this? And I try to change their mind. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. But I teach the best subject there is. I'm teaching about the personalities who created us. The Washingtons, the Lincolns, the Jeffersons, the Adams. They're going to send me away for a month down to Washington, D.C. to comb through the Constitution of the United States as a James Madison Fellow. That information that I come back is extremely important. Secretary Memorial hit upon it. Conversation. Things really haven't changed. They got ugly. Adams and Jefferson were once the best of friends. They hurled insults at each other, ripped each other apart, and then later on their desks, they healed the wounds. But you start going through the documents. Some of the arguments are still the same. Some are different. But they have respect for each other. They have conversation. They have dignified debate. That's what's missing in America at this point. They're dignified debate. And at the end of it, I don't get what I want, and you don't get what you want. We meet somewhere in the middle. That is the magic of our democracy. That's what I try to instill in our students. Bring it forward. I don't care what your idea is. If I've done my job and done it well, responding to a student's question, how do I do this? And I went out and did it. Because I feel that I need to do the very things they're asking about. Next thing I know, I'm on paperwork, I'm off to some convention, supporting John McCain. Next thing I know, I'm running for Secretary of State. Because a kid asked a question. But if I'm going to teach history and teach civics and do it right, I better damn well do it myself and be an example in my own life. Now, if I've done my job correctly, they don't know what side of the fence I ever sit on. And I can remember a few years ago where I would teach, and it was mostly lecture-driven. And now we're getting more project-based stuff. I could start on the right-hand side of the room, and I was a radical right. I moved to the middle, and I was in the middle. I go to the left, I'm on the left. But they never knew. I elicit from them what they think, that critical thinking part that's so important. Because that helps advance the debate, the conversation. And ultimately, what we need is the compromise. So I thank you. This is absolutely thrilling. And it tickled pink. I often don't think I deserve this stuff. I'm no better or no different than any of my colleagues. Lisa DeVenture is our former department head. She teaches genocide and all kinds of great courses. But I work with a bunch of people who love and are passionate about their subject matter. And I think that's what separates us from others. We love and practice what we preach. We're in the trenches, we're doing it, we wear multiple hats, and we're inspired. And being inspired, we inspire our students to have dignified debate, conversation, and compromise. So I thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you, Chris. He wasn't kidding about his community service. When I called the winners to tell them they had won, which is the most fun thing about this position, it was like 8 o'clock at night, and he told me he had to call me back because he was at correct me if I'm wrong, he's in the volunteer fire department, and they were having classes, some more training classes, so he practices what he preaches. Our Final presenter, evaluator is Adonis Spears. I knew of Adonis before I met her personally. She's an active member of the Charahoe and tribal communities and was appointed to the Charahoe School Committee to fill out the term after a member resigned. She proved to be a capable and gracious in that position, and I observed her demonstrating those qualities in her relationships with friends and strangers, and as mother to her 4 cute stair-step children. Whenever you call, you have to time your calls to Adonis as well. She's busy. Adonis Spears, Dene, Ojibwe, Chickasaw, Choctaw, is an educator working in the public humanities. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in anthropology from the University of Denver and has worked for the Heard Museum, Museum of Northern Arizona, Mashantucket Pequot Museum and Research Center, and currently serves on the board of the Federation of State Humanities Councils. Adonis is the co-director of the Upstander Academy, an intensive professional development equipping classroom and public history educators with tools to teach about genocide. She's a founding member of the Acamont Educational Initiative, which is an Indigenous education and interpretive consultancy for museums, K-12 schools, and colleges and universities. She's a 2021 through 2023 Tribal Community Member in Residence for the Native American and Indigenous Studies Initiative at Brown University. Originally from Cape Verde, Arizona, she lives in Hope Valley, Rhode Island with her husband and their 4 cute children. Adonis will be presenting our Grand Prize Award to Heidi Lamb. Thank you.
President Tabani Anna William, thank you so much. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of South County. Thank you to Secretary Amore and all of our elected officials who are here joining us on this joyous afternoon. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be with you, doing what we should be doing in earnest every day, which is expressing our gratitude and our thanks for the work that you do. It is immeasurable. And we're honored to be able to give you these small tokens for the massive amount of work that you do in our society. The recipient of this year's Susan Wilson Civic Education Grand Prize Award is Heidi Lamb, social studies teacher at the Gray School in Providence. Miss Lamb grew up in East Providence and graduated from St. Mary's Academy, Bayview. She earned her Bachelor of Arts from Rhode Island College with a major in political science and a minor in American history. She went on to earn her Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction from Armstrong Atlantic University in Savannah, Georgia. She has taught for 15 years, with the last 6 years at the Grace School. Ms. Lamb is also the mother of 3 sons, Ben, 20, Evan, 17, and Dominic, 12. In her free time, she enjoys reading, writing, and cooking, and when they are not in school, the family enjoys taking those aforementioned road trips in their vintage Shasta camper. It is on her bucket list to bring her family to every national park in the United States. In her role at the Grace School, Ms. Lamb has contributed to an intentional and student-centered multi-year approach that empowers students in grades 5 through 8 to be agents of change and betterment in their schools, communities, and on the state and national level. Through her leadership, she and her team have developed a curriculum that prioritizes critical engagement with United States governance and incorporates justice and equity as meaningful components to civics. Ms. Lamb teaches civics for a culturally diverse and neurodiverse population of students. Her classes are all inclusive, with 30 to 50% of students in each class on an IEP for special needs. Every student in her classroom brings unique and meaningful perspectives and experiences, and each is empowered by Ms. Lamb's investment to equip all students to make the future world a better place. What impressed the judges panel most is the carefully crafted 4-year methodology that builds on the foundational understanding that everyone has a voice, and that voice is power, which makes learning about civics not only interesting, but participatory, necessary, and urgent. Each year of the program articulates with the year prior in clear ways, therefore building, enhancing, and complicating the student's understanding from year to year. This kind of scaffolding is important for both a nuanced and broad understanding of civics and all of its facets. Guiding questions like, does Congress really represent us? And how does the Supreme Court shape our society? Help students focus on building historic and political context, as well as understanding and application of knowledge. The critical lens through which students learn about civics is also important in a world where media literacy and analytical thinking are integral to the health of our nation. Ms. Lamb's commitment and vision have shaped the design and execution of this extraordinary civics pathway, a pedagogical model we believe can be replicated in middle schools across Rhode Island. And I have to reflect on the words spoken here this afternoon. Being a Native person, I'm an enrolled citizen of the Navajo Nation. My husband is an enrolled citizen of the Narragansett Indian Tribe. All 4 of our children are enrolled citizens of the Narragansett Indian Tribe. Our perspective on American democracy is different than most Americans. But through the power and the education of civics, it's important that we all have a voice in the nation that we are building together from this point on. And Ms. Lamb, the work that you have done and the work that you continue to do is an investment in my own children's future, an investment in their great-great-grandchildren's future, and for the next 7 generations. It is my pleasure and my honor to be in the same room as you and to award you with the League of Women Voters of Rhode Island, Susan B. Wilson Civic Education Merit Award Grand Prize for 2023, as well as a notation from Secretary Moore. And I also have for you a notation from the House of Representatives here in Rhode Island. I'd like to read it to you now. And also from the Senate. State of Rhode Island citation, be it hereby known to all that the Rhode Island House of Representatives hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to Heidi Lamb, teacher at the Gray School, in recognition of the outstanding achievement and distinguished honor of receiving the grand prize for the 16th Annual Susan B. Wilson Award. Congratulations.
Wow. Today has been an emotional day. My 8th graders graduated this afternoon as well. Many stacks of things here. I'd like to first thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for recognizing the importance of teaching civics and the excellent work that educators do. The first ingredient in an effective civics program, my colleagues know how big of a deal this is, right? The first ingredient in an effective civics program is having an administration that is willing to dedicate the time to prioritize civics. I would like to thank my administrators at the Gray School, Margaret Knowlton and Heather Logan-Fuso, who are both here today, for understanding the importance of teaching civics. When I arrived at the Gray School at Meeting Street 6 years ago, they were committed to developing a robust social studies program that would have a full trimester of civics, a trimester of history, and a trimester of social justice for each grade from 5 through 8. I was given the dream opportunity to develop this program from the ground up. People have always recognized the importance of teaching history. It's important to teach true history with the good, the bad, and the ugly, so we can understand how we arrived at this point and the mistakes that we've made along the way. It's important to teach social justice, so we understand and honor the struggles and triumphs of the people who came before us, and to learn about those who are on the front lines now. These struggles bring us closer to the more perfect union extolled in the Constitution. Civics doesn't seem as exciting, and so it's often relegated to be a side topic. But civics is so much more. To teach students how their government works and their rights and responsibilities as citizens is to literally put their hands on the levers of change. By the time our students leave us in the 8th grade, they've had 4 full trimesters of civics that cover all 3 branches of government. In the 5th grade, we work to answer the question, do we live in a democracy? They learn about the foundations of democracy, Locke and Hobbes, what other governments look like, and the power of voting. We do simulations, we do all kinds of fun stuff with it. 6th graders focus on the executive branch. They learn about the president and the cabinet. They work to answer the question, do we, the people, actually elect the president, and learn about how the Electoral College works, something that most adults have a hard time grasping. 7th graders focus on the legislative branch. They learn about Congress, how bills are passed. They consider the question, does Congress really represent us? And with that, they compare the demographic makeup of Congress today and the demographics of the United States. They have to dig that data up and compare it all. And this spurs important conversations about why representation and supporting diverse candidates is important. Our 8th graders focus on the judicial branch. They explore the questions, can there be justice for all? And how does the Supreme Court shape our society? They look at landmark cases. They look at how Supreme Court justices are appointed. They learn about judicial philosophies and how that can lean one way or the other for the court. During our civics trimester, grades 5 through 8 participate in elections for our middle school student council. Inclusivity is a core value at the Gray School. 30 to 50% of our students have an IEP for special needs. Instead of individual students running for office, our students run in candidate groups of 2 or 3 students for offices of co-presidents, co-vice presidents, co-secretaries, and co-treasurers. Each candidate group has to include a student with an IEP, but this doesn't just benefit our students with IEPs, it also encourages our shy students who wouldn't normally run for office to get involved. The campaign season ends with collaborative speeches at an exciting election convention that the kids look forward to every year. And almost every single middle school student participates and runs for an office. I hope this whets their appetite to someday run for real political office. There's so much more that we actually do. We have our history trimester, we have our social justice trimester, but I read the instructions and it said to keep everything to about 3 minutes. So I'm just going to finish by saying this. Civics gives our students the operations manual to the government. My students give me great hope for the future. We must empower them to be the change makers that we so badly need. Thank you so much for this award. It means the world to me. Just have a few closing words. First of all, I have to say, I turned to April and said, I kind of wish I was in high school again. And these teachers, they were great. I'd like to thank, first of all, Secretary Lori for that fabulous conversation that you had with us today. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. As well as the presenters of our winners. Thank you very much, judges, and of course, our winners. Good luck. We want you to keep doing what you're doing, and then get those kids to keep doing what they're doing. So I thank you all for that. And I'd like to thank our co-chair people, Kristen Chambers and Nancy McLean back there, and their go-to proofreader and steadfast assistant, Marilyn McKenna. And thanks for such a superb job. You guys do a wonderful job. Without you, this ceremony would work very well, especially me with the computer. You're greatly appreciated. And I'd like to thank our videographer, Dylan. Hi there, Dylan. Thank you again. He was here last year. And our League of Women Voters Rhode Island President, Jane Coster, and one of our board members, Lois. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the state representatives that I contacted, the constituents of. I don't know you all, but I thank you for showing up and supporting these teachers. It means a lot to them, I know. It does for me, too. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, let me try it again. League of Women Voters Rhode Island Education Fund for the funds for this program and for their support of our league. They've been wonderful to us, and we hope to keep going and keep doing things like this. We want to develop our programs more and more to honor those people that are not seen every day, but that do the work. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.